Hello, Kamato class! Welcome back sa isa na namang pagtuklas ng aralin sa mathematics. We define statistics as the branch of mathematics concerned with collection, organization, presentation, analysis, and interpretation of numerical data. Usually, kapag pinag-uusapan ng statistics, laging ang first thing na ginagawa is collection. And that's what are we going to present with this video presentation. We will be working with gathering statistical data or collecting statistical data. Statistical data, let us start working with this. A data collection is the systematic collecting and analysis of relevant information in order to provide answers to pertinent questions and assess the outcomes. We know that in conducting our research, collection of data is the first step na lagi nating ginagawa. Then the data will be organized and presented in compact form. So in data collection, it concentrates on learning things about a particular subject. For instance, you wanted to work on with the academic performance of the student or student's academic performance. If this is the case, maybe, so yun yung dapat nating makollect sa data, yung academic performance ng mga estudyante. If we wanted to work on with the population of every barangay in Talim Island, so siguro we need to go to a statistics office, so yung in charge para makuha natin yung mga population ng every barangay in Talim Island. Or churches in the province of Rizal. So, dapat kapag nagko-collect tayo ng data, it is very much related to a specific or particular subject na gusto nating malaman. Same as COVID pandemic. So, yan yung mga ilan sa halimbawa kapag magko-collect tayo ng data. And when we collect data, it may be gathered in this form. It can be primary source or secondary source. Ano nga ba itong primary source? Primary data collection is the collection of raw data at the source. It is the process of gathering original data gathered by a researcher for the purpose of conducting research. So it is original in nature. For instance, you work on with interview information because you get the information with interview and it is first-hand information, then we consider that as primary data. How about secondary source? A secondary data collection, on the other hand, is the collection of data from a source other than the original user. It is the method of gathering data that already exists. Like books, so it exists already, then we just gather information from the book, then that is secondary data. Same as journals, magazines, and research or studies that are already conducted. So, ibig sabihin, kapag dyan tayo kumuha ng mga information, then that is already a secondary data. So, talking of data collection, so it is important that we determine the methods that we will be using when we collect data. And let's start working with the first one. Ang una ay interview. So, yan yung pinakaunang paraan para makakollect tayo ng data. An interview is a face-to-face conversation between two people for the sole purpose of gathering relevant information for research project. The keyword when we talk of interview is a face-to-face conversation. So when we talk of interview, it is a procedure designed to obtain information from a person. So kaya nga face-to-face siya. Ibig sabihin you are gathering information from a person through oral responses to oral inquiries. So at kapag pinag-uusapan natin ng interview, there are different method that we are about to work on when we talk of interview. And these are structured, semi-structured, and unstructured interviews. These are the three types of interview, each with a slight variation from the other. So, lahat ng ito ay face-to-face kasi nga interview. So, may mga ilang part lang sila na nagkakaroon ng pagkakaiba. And let us try to know that one at a time. A structured interview is simply a questionnaire that is administered verbally. It is surface level in depth, and it is usually completed in a short period of time. So when we talk of this structured interview, you are using questionnaire based on predetermined and standardized identical sets of questions. So questions are ready. So ibig sabihin, yun lang talaga yung gagamitin mo kapag gagamitin mo itong pamamaraan ng structured interview. Okay, on the other hand, a semi-structured interview is a method in which several key questions are asked to cover the scope of the areas to be explored. It gives the researcher a little more freedom to investigate the subject. So kanina, you are just asking question to sa structured interview, naka-prepared na yung question that you will be asking. So with semi-structured interview, may list of themes and possible some key question to cover pa rin dun sa gusto mong malaman. The only difference of this, yung order of question can be changed. So pwede rin tayong may i-delete na ilang mga tanong na na-ready natin depending upon on the answer of the respondent. So there are possibility that when we talk of this type of question, sa mga follow-up question, may lalabas ka pa rin na mas gusto mong malaman, and that will give you the direction para mas malaman mo yung mga gusto mong information na malaman. Kaya nga depende pa rin ito sa magiging sagot ng ini-interview mo para makapag-follow up ka ng questions. And the last one is what we call unstructured interviews. So pag sinabi natin unstructured interviews, these are in-depth interviews that allows the researcher to gather a wide range of information with a specific goal in mind. This method has advantage of allowing a researcher to combine structured and flexibility despite the fact that it's more time consuming. So, kapag sinabi nating unstructured interviews, this is a pre-interview. There is no generally set format to follow so that the interviewer can have a various direction. So, hindi ito katulad ng structured at semi-structured na parehas may prepare question. Dito sa unstructured interview, pwedeng habang ini-interview mo siya, magbigay ka lang ng isang specific topic. For instance, you go to a company, gusto mong malaman ang tungkol sa isang company. Then sasabihin mo lang, then tell something about the company, then ayan, marami na siyang pwedeng isagot. And from that, pwede ka ngayon makapagtanong pa base sa kanyang magiging information na ibibigay sa iyo. Kaya nga, this is a free interview. So, walang prepared question. Basta kung ano yung possible na lumabas habang you are interviewing, yun yung tinatawag natin unstructured interviews. Kapag pinag-uusapan natin ng interview, kailangan natin malaman so when to use it and how to gather information when we use interview. Ang interview ay ginagamit to gain a thorough understanding of people's perception or opinions on a subject. So, ibig sabihin, kapag interview yung gagamitin natin, obviously because this is face-to-face, so you are asking from a certain people na gusto mong malaman yung information sa subject matter. Then, paano mag-gather ng information? Sabi natin kanina, it is an individual interviews as open-ended question to participants. So, this is gathering information through interview talaga. How about the advantages or the pros and cons of interview? So, pag pinag-uusapan ng interview, ang mga pros nito ay in-depth information. Since you are talking to a certain person, so talagang makakakuha ka ng in-depth information sa subject matter na you wanted to know. Then the ability to be flexible, kasi nga, because this is an interview, so pwede ka talaga mag-follow-up question, especially dun sa pangatlong type, unstructured interview. Then accurate data, kasi nga, it's a first-hand information, kasi mismo dun sa tao mo makukuha yung mga information, so the data is accurate. Then ano naman yung cons? So one is time-consuming. Kasi nga, you have to be in a certain place para ma-interview mo yung isang tao o yung kukunan mo ng information. Then expensive to collect, so same way, kasi nga time consuming, so it's also expensive going to a certain place. Then the interviewer may be biased. So that's all about interview. Let's work on with the next one. And that is what we call observation. Another way to collect data is the observation method. Observation is a data collection method in which information about a phenomenon is gathered by watching behavior, events, or noting physical characteristics in their natural setting. So, when do we use this observation? So, observation kasi, usually, ikaw lang talaga yung mag-gather ng information batay sa yung makikita, batay sa yung ma-observe in a certain place. So, we use this to comprehend something in its natural context. For instance, gusto mong malaman ang buhay ng mga taga Talim Island, then you need to go to Talim Island and observe things that you wanted to know. And how to gather the information. Measure a group of people without attempting to influence them. So you are just getting some information through what you've seen, through what you experience when you go to that natural setting. So ano naman yung mga pros and cons ng observation? One of the pros is it is simple to administer. Para kasing ikaw lang yung may involved, mag-observe ka lang talaga. So, kung may involved na iba, so you just observing them. It's a widely accepted practice. Maraming gumagamit ng observation approach when they gathered information or data. The data is usually objective kasi nga, kung ano yung gusto mong malaman, that's what are you going to look for. Then it is appropriate for a certain situation kasi you need to go to a place na gusto mong malaman yung mga information. Then the cons is bias may arise. Bakit magkakaroon ng bias when we talk of observation? Kasi nga, some phenomena are not open to observation. Then it is expensive to administer going to a certain place. Its validity cannot be predicted accurately because you are just take down note of those information. Baka mayroong hindi ka ma-observe. The information is limited. That's all about the pros and cons of observation. Then let's have the next one. And that is all about survey and questionnaires. Usually, ito yung madalas gamitin ng mga nag-gather na information. So pag sinabi nating survey and questionnaires, this is the process of gathering data via an instrument that consists of a series of questions and prompts designed to elicit a response from the individuals to whom it is administered. Questionnaires are used to collect information from a group of people. To be clear, a questionnaire is not a survey. Rather, it is a component of one, because a survey is a data collection process that uses a variety of data collection methods, so including questionnaire. So they're just part of each other. Then when we talk of questionnaire, there are three kinds of questions that we are about to use. They are fixed, alternative, scale, and open-ended. With each of the questions tailored to the nature and scope of the research. So depende sa research na gagawin mo kung anong kind of question that you are about to ask. Pag sinabi nating fixed alternative question, so ito yung tulad ng multiple choice question. So, syempre, pag sinabi naman natin scale, yan yung may 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Sa checklist, i-check mo lang kung 5 ba ang opinion mo dito, or 3, or 4, or 3, or 2, or 1. Then the other one is open-ended question. It is just a question na sasagutin lang na mga isa-survey natin. So, that's all about three types of or three kinds of question that we are about to use. Hindi naman natin kung kailan ito ginagamit. So, kailan ginagamit ang survey and questionnaire and how to gather information. We use surveys and questionnaire to comprehend the general characteristic of a perspective or a group of people. Then, kailan naman ito, how to gather, distribute a questionnaire to a sample online, in person, or over the phone. So usually may mga materials yan na pwede tayong i-distribute dun sa ating mga respondent. Pero ngayon, uso na rin yung online. We can use that when we gathered information. So ano naman yung pros and cons ng questionnaires and survey? So it is free from the bias of the interviewer. Kasi nga, yung respondent lang ang magsasagot. Then respondent identity is protected. May nakalagay usually kapag nagbibigay ka ng survey form na yung privacy ng respondent is protected. Then respondents have adequate time to give responses. Hindi ka mamamadali kasi nga nasa iyo yung copy ng questionnaires. So anytime na gusto mong magsagot, you can do so. Then less expensive. Then the cons naman, answers may be dishonest or the respondents lose interest midway. Lalo na kung napakadaming mga sinasagutan, baka basta na lang mag-check o basta na lang magsagot ang mga respondent. Then questionnaires can produce qualitative data. Kasi baka usually mga quantitative yung maging data na lumabas kapag ginamit natin ito. Then questions might be left unanswered. Parang kaduktong tayo dun sa una. Answer may be dishonest. Dito pwedeng laktawang sagutan while answering the survey questionnaire. Then not all question can be analyzed easily. So that will be a big problem, especially kapag hindi maintindihan nung respondent yung mga tanong. So it is inflexible and can be changed once set. So kung ano na yung mabigay natin, yun lang talaga yung dapat sagutan ng ating mga respondents. So it is not flexible. The last one is the experiment. So an experiment is a data collection method in which you, as a researcher, change some variables and observe how they affect other variables. So the variables that you manipulated are known as independent variable. Dito yan sa experimental, and while the variables that change as a result of manipulation are known as dependent variables. So, usually kapag pinag-uusapan talaga ang experimental approach in collecting data, so napakahalaga yung independent variables at dependent variables. So, when to use it and how to gather the information. So, to put a causal relationship to the test. So, kapag mayroon kang gustong malaman na relationship to a certain variables, so yan. So we will be using experimental approach. For instance, in education, may ginawa kang materials at you wanted to know how effective is that materials, then we can use experimental. Then manipulate variables and observe how they affect each other. So kapag may gusto, yun nga, nabanggit ko kanina, kapag mayroon tayong materials na ginawa at gusto nating malaman kung ano ang epekto nito, then we will be working with that, with gathering information. Talaga mag-experiment ka. So, ang pros niya ay gain insight into methods of instruction. Humans performs experiment and provide for greater transferability than anecdotal research. As a researcher, talagang makikita mo yung magiging result nito while conducting that experiment. So, hindi siya anecdotal research kasi nga kung ano yung maging result ng experiment, that's it. Then, the cons is subject to human error. Then, sample may not be representative of the population. Napakahalaga kasi kapag nagkakandak tayo ng experiment, the sample really a representative of the population. Then can produce artificial result kasi baka maya-maya we manipulated kung ano yung magiging result. Then groups may not be comparable. So napakahalaga rin sa experiment, kapag nagkakanta ka ng experiment, yung two groups mo ay comparable talaga at the beginning of the experiment. So yan ang iba't ibang method na ginagamit natin para makakollect tayo ng mga data sa statistic. And that's all, Kamato class. God bless us.